states of consciousness. When we talk about the states of consciousness, the first thing we want to point out is that state of consciousness is not all or none. It's not a binary. There are different levels of consciousness, different levels of awareness, and different qualities of conscious awareness. When you are taking classes, when you are reading a book, or when you are doing your job, you are in the waking consciousness. This is normal, clear, organized, alert state of awareness. I am alert now, and I'm conscious of what's going on around me and what's going on inside me. There are also altered states of consciousness. These are different from being fully awake. When we are sleeping, we enter into a very unique style of conscious awareness. Most of the times we are unconscious. We are not conscious of our environment, but we can become conscious. We can wake up quite easily. And hypnosis can create altered state of consciousness, producing some really interesting qualities of experience. Chemicals, drugs, medication, they can produce an altered state of consciousness, including hallucination and sometimes delusions. These are the altered states of consciousness. There are also non-conscious processes in the human body. Many of the physiological or biological processes are regulated by non-conscious processes. We cannot become aware of the process itself. One example is hormone secretions in the body. Think about insulin. When people develop diabetes, one kind of a type 1 diabetes is caused by insufficient production of the hormone of insulin from the pancreas. The pancreas just does not produce enough insulin for the person to digest the sugar, break down glucose, and turn glucose into power and nutrition for the body. I'm not aware of any hormones being produced. I'm totally unaware of the production of insulin from my pancreas. Although this process happens all the time in me, in my body, I'm unconscious. I'm not consciously aware of it. Those are the non-conscious process. Blood pressure is largely controlled by non-conscious processes. I cannot control it, and usually, most of the time, I'm unaware of it. If I have a high blood pressure, it's highly likely that I don't know. The high blood pressure or hypertension is called the silent killer. It is silent because it is outside of normal conscious awareness. We just don't know it. Many of these biological functions are non-conscious. Non-conscious means that we cannot become consciously aware of them or consciously control them. The unconscious is a very special terminology created by Sigmund Freud, and it's widely used in psychoanalysis. According to Sigmund Freud, the conscious part of the mental life is only part of a mental life, and it's just a superficial part. The conscious awareness of what's going on in my conscious awareness is the top of the iceberg. Many of my motivations are hidden or latent or unconscious. The unconscious part of the human psyche is called the id. The id would be the warehouse of strong, powerful drives, basic drives, sex drives, aggression drives, the death instinct, and the unconscious id, they follow the pleasure principle. These drives seek immediate gratification. They don't want to wait, and they don't want to be moderate in their enjoyment. On the other hand, the ego and the superego are more likely to be available to conscious reflection and conscious awareness. The superego is a person's ideal image of him or herself. This part of the psyche reflects a person's moral principles, ethical values, and society's expectations. This is a moral part of the psyche. It follows the ethical and moral principle. The superego would tell the person what's right and what's wrong, what's allowable, what's not allowed within the norm of a particular culture. And then the ego is the executive system. It's like a CEO of a company. This is a manager of the house. The ego follows the reality principle. The ego tries to determine what's realistic, what kind of actions are realistic within this environment. And it tries to maintain peace between the id and the superego. The ego tries to mediate between the conflicting tendencies coming from the unconscious, drives, sex, and aggression versus the constraints of society, moral values, potential sanctions, and ethical principles. This so the id is unconscious, and this is a very special terminology for psychoanalysis. Many of the altered state of consciousness have biological roots or biological underpinnings. Animals go through cycles. Many bodily functions, biological functions are determined by cycles. There are annual cycles. Many animals have annual cycles. Hibernation in bears and some other mammals. When winter comes, bears would go into hibernation. They would sleep through the winter season. When it's cold and there's not too much to eat, they would regulate their metabolism to a really low level, conserve energy and nutrients, and they hide in a cave or in a tree to hibernate. Birds, some migrating birds, some birds are migrating. They follow their migration follow annual cycles. Salmon, the salmon fish, they follow clear cycles. Sometimes the people also get influenced by seasonal cycles. The seasonal affective disorder is a winter blues. For some people, the winter is a time for emotional difficulties. When the daylight gets really short, sunlight is not sufficient, some people feel sad, lack of energy, demoralized. They experience depression-like symptoms. And this is a seasonal problem, seasonal affective disorder. On a daily basis, we go through the biological clock. Many body functions are regulated by the biological clock, and these are the circadian rhythms. Circadian rhythms usually last, one cycle is between 24 hours to 25 hours. And one part of the cycle is sleep and wake. You usually complete one cycle of a week and sleep within 24 hours. Of course, you may take a little bit nap, maybe during the daytime, but one cycle is 24 to 25 hours. It's not only about sleep and wake. Some other body functions also change within the cycle. Body temperature, growth hormones varies throughout the day. And within each circadian cycle, within each 24, 25 hours, you sleep. And within each night's sleep, you go through several stages, sleep stages. There are several stages within one night of sleep. And each of these stages will last for about 90 minutes. There's a 90-minute cycle during sleep. The circadian rhythm, the 24-25-hour cycle of sleep and wake is regulated biologically, and it receives information from the sun. It's regulated by sunlight. Sunlight would enter the eye and then would travel down the optic nerve, and then would eventually go to the pineal gland. The pineal gland produces a hormone, melatonin. When the daylight gets dark, when the light coming through the eye is really less and less bright, the pineal gland starts to increase production of melatonin. Sorry, melatonin. I might have mispronounced the word. It's melatonin. The melatonin would make people feel drowsy and get ready for sleep. This is a sleep hormone. In fact, you can buy melatonin supplements from the pharmacy, from the drugstore. It's a natural production from the brain, and it does help people to fall asleep faster. When we study sleep, we need to take several measures. Suppose you volunteer as a research participant at a sleep lab. The researcher will hook you up with several instruments for measurement. For one thing, the researcher would measure your brain waves, the EEG. The EEG measures the axon's electric currents. It measures action potentials. When we were talking about biological psychology, we learned that within the axon makes use of electric currents, which are called impulse or action potentials, to send information to other neurons. And when people are asleep, their brain is still very active. The axons in the brain cells, in the nerve cells, are actively producing or generating electric currents. We can measure these waves generated by the axons and look at the waveform to determine the sleep stages and the state of consciousness of the person being studied. Researchers also measure muscle tension. Overall, when people are sleeping, their muscle tension reduces. I'm much more relaxed when I'm sleeping than when I'm awake. But there's still some muscle tension. The muscle is not fully relaxed. We want to measure muscle tension and study how it varies according to different sleep stages. The researcher would also measure eye movement, movement from two eyes. In rapid eye movement sleep stage, the eye would move periodically, up and down, left and right. There are a lot of activities during sleep. Sleep is not totally passive. There are neuron firings all the time, constantly, and there are muscle movements, twitches, tensions, and there are eye movements during sleep, especially during the REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. By looking at the brainwave, these are the electric activities recorded from the brain by EEG. we can determine the sleep stages, which stage the person is in. When people are fully awake and alert, they show the beta wave. When people are drowsy, just about to fall asleep, and very relaxed, they show the alpha sleep. Alpha wave. Alpha wave is correlated with relaxation and drowsiness. And then people fall asleep, they first go into the stage 1 sleep. Stage N1. N stands for non-REM. There are 3 non-REM stages, N1, N2, and N3. Each of these stages would show a different brainwave, different waveform. Stage 1 sleep is shallow sleep. People wake up very easily. A little bit of noise and disturbance would wake them up. Light sleep, shallow sleep. And then they will go to the stage 2 sleep, N2 sleep, a little bit deeper. A little bit deeper level of sleep, muscles more relaxed. And then stage 3 is really the good deep sleep. The muscles are relaxed, and it's hard to wake them up, to make people up when they're in the N3 level sleep. Stage 3 sleep or deep sleep is very important for repairing for tissue damage. The tear and wears suffered by the body during the day's hard work is being repaired, and the body recuperates and recovers from the stress. And then the REM sleep. REM sleep stands for rapid eye movement sleep. Rapid eye movement. During this stage of sleep, the eyeballs would move periodically in all the directions, darting back and forth in all directions. And then the person usually reports dreaming. Well, in this state, people have a lot of dreams. And some of those dreams are vivid and lucid. REM sleep is also very important for memory consolidation. The REM sleep is called the paradoxical sleep. It's paradoxical because the person is relaxed, the person is sleeping on the surface, but at the same time, during REM sleep, the body is increasing arousal. Heart rate tends to increase, and the muscle tension tends to increase, and the eyeballs are moving, and also the person is reporting he's dreaming, or he or she is dreaming a lot during REM sleep. In one night of sleep, the different cycles have a different proportion of different stages of sleep. In the early part of the sleep cycle, in one night, people have more deep sleep. Deep sleep is more abundant during the first 2 cycles. But deep sleep gets reduced over the last part of the sleep cycle. REM sleep, on the other hand, tends to increase from early in the night to late in the night to the next morning. We have more and more REM sleep throughout the night, but less and less deep sleep throughout the night. Sleep serves very important functions, including biological functions and psychological functions. When people lose sleep or when people suffer from sleep deprivation, there are serious consequences. When people lose a lot of sleep is to be less than the normal range of hours, they suffer a lot of from fatigue. In extreme cases, sleep loss could cause death. And when people are not sleeping well, their concentration gets impaired. When they're driving a car or when they're operating machines, they cannot focus. They might get into accidents. And when people are losing a lot of sleep, their emotional stability is affected. They become irritable, they become unaged, very, very unstable. And then sleep loss depress immune system. When people don't sleep enough, the immune system gets weakened, they become more vulnerable to infection and other diseases. Sleep serves biological functions, important biological functions. There are some sleep disorders. The most common sleep disorder is insomnia. That is not being able to get enough sleep. Insomnia has several symptoms, a combination of different symptoms. The common symptoms would include not being able to fall asleep, have difficulty falling asleep. The person may lay in bed but unable to fall asleep. That's one symptom. Another one would be wake up in the middle of the night and not being able to go back to sleep. Sometimes people wake up 3 times during one night's sleep, and it takes more than half an hour each time for them to go back to sleep. That would be a possible insomnia problem. And also waking up too early. Early waking is another symptom of sleep insomnia problem. Another kind of a sleep problem is sleepwalking, somnambulism. This is a rather rare situation where the person is apparently sleeping. He's unconscious, but he's moving. The person may get out of bed, leave bed, and walk into the living room, sit on the sofa, and fall asleep there, throughout the night. In the morning hours, he would have no memory of getting up and moving around. He apparently, or the person, the sleepwalker, apparently do this all out of consciousness, in an unconscious way. That's somnambulism. Another kind of a sleep problem is nightmares. Nightmares are bad dreams, frightening dreams. Usually, nightmares occur during REM sleep. In REM sleep, people have a lot of lucid dreams anyways. Night terrors is more serious than nightmares. It's not just bad dream. When people have a night terrors, they wake up and they have a lot of bodily reactions, heart pounding, sweating, and they feel terrified, and their breathing really quickens. Besides having a bad dream, being scared, they have a lot of biological, physiological, bodily reactions. Narcolepsy can be considered the opposite to insomnia. For insomnia, people have trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, they wake up too early, too easily. But narcolepsy, they fall asleep too easily. Sometimes when these individuals, when they are walking around or when they're driving a car, when they are fully awake, they suddenly fall asleep. It seems that people without this problem would first go to the shallow sleep, stage 1 sleep, and then a little bit deeper stage 2 sleep, and then they would go to the deep sleep, N3. But people with narcolepsy seem to go from being awake directly to the deep sleep, and they just lose conscious awareness. Sometimes this could cause danger. Fortunately, there are ways to manage this situation. They could take stimulants. Stimulants would increase nervous system arousal, help them stay awake, and they can take strategic naps during the day. They can take a nap maybe every 3 hours, every 4 hours, every 2 hours to proactively manage their tendency to fall asleep. Sleep apnea is associated with snoring. These people snore a lot, but more than that, sometimes their breathing stops in the middle of the sleep. They have difficulty breathing. That could cause health problems. For one thing, you don't get a good night of rest. The sleep is less restful than people without sleep apnea. And also, in serious cases, it could cause heart problems. And the main reason is that the air tracks, the air get blocked, breathing get blocked during sleep, and there are medical devices that can manage this problem. Dream is a big part of sleep. A dream is rather difficult to study. In most nights, people dream. Most of the time, people don't remember their dreams. They remember their dreams only when they wake up in the middle of a dream or right after the dream. For research in dreams, the easiest way to collect data would be asking people to keep track of the dreams, keep a diary of all the dreams, and then the researcher could analyze the content and look for commonality, common themes, common content of the dreams. Research found that most people have negative dreams most of the time. Few people have a lot of positive dreams. So it seems that the emotional experience in the dreams are mostly negative. And there are a lot of failure dreams. Failure dreams would be that people dream of being attacked and you try to fight back, but your arms are weak as noodles. And also you dream about being pursued, a bear is chasing after you, or a lion, a tiger is chasing after you, and you try to run away, but your legs are heavy, your legs will not move. And those are failure dreams. Sometimes these are related with muscle relaxation. During sleep, your muscles are relaxed, and if you try to move them in the dream, they're not going to move. That would create a sense of not being able to move, failure dreams. Sexual dreams are not common, very uncommon, and this really does not support the psychoanalysis theory. According to psychoanalysis, Sigmund Freud, dreams serve the function of wish fulfillment. Dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. When people are sleeping, their ego is not watching their unconscious all the time. When the cat is out of the house, the mouse would come out and play. Theoretically speaking, during dream, people would have a lot of sexual expression of sexual instincts and aggression instincts, but the content analysis of dreams do not find a lot of sexual themed dreams. The way Sigmund Freud analyzed this or respond to this kind of issue is that there are two types of contents to the dream. The manifest content or the apparent content of dream is what you dream about. And this is a superficial. The deep content is a symbolic meaning or the latent content, the hidden meaning of the dreams. Freud believed that even during sleep, the ego is not totally asleep. The ego is not totally away. Even during sleep, your mental life is still self-censoring, still self-monitoring, still trying to kind of control the unacceptable contents. Therefore, the sexual instincts and aggression instincts cannot be expressed directly, even in the dream. They have to find a symbolic way or roundabout way to express themselves. They have to find some disguise that manifest what you dream about. Those contents are actually disguised expression of the latent content or the drives. And he has a way of interpreting these dreams. He has a really well-known book called The Interpretation of Dreams. Let's search for that book. In this book, Sigmund Freud talks about how to understand the dreams, how to gain insight into people's unconscious drives by uncovering the latent content of the dreams. He has some examples. For example, one person dreams about watching a train in the middle of the night, watching a train moving across a plain in the middle of the night. According to his analysis, this be the apparent or manifest content of the dream, and the latent content would be a concern about death, something related with death instinct. That's really a subjective interpretation. And he also believed that when people dream about walking inside a tunnel, a long tunnel, this kind of a manifest content is related with the sexual instincts. The latent content or the symbolic content of the long tunnel would be sexual related. Also, when people dream about climbing stairs, staircases, stairwells, those manifest contents are also related with the latent content of sexuality. This is one model of dream. Why people dream is wish fulfillment. Dream allow people to fulfill the forbidden wish coming from their id, from the unconscious drives. Another model of dream or theory of dream is information processing. When we are dreaming, when we have a dream, it's usually related with what we were doing during the daytime. Maybe in the dream, the brain is trying to sort through and think about, process the experiences during the daytime. It's information processing. This might be true. And then another model or theory of dream that the dream serve physiological functions. The dream stimulates the body. I mean, the brain. The brain is active. The brain is firing. The neurons in the brain are firing all the time when people are sleeping. Some psychologists believe that REM sleep are particularly important for stimulating the brain, and this is important for brain development. Sleep changes over the entire life cycle. Babies, infants, newborns, they sleep a lot. Newborns sleep almost 16 hours a day, and they don't have a proper circadian cycle. They sleep day and night. They wake up in the night and they can sleep during the day. They sleep a lot. As people's age increases, the amount of sleep they engage in decreases. By the time people are 3-year-olds, they sleep for about still a lot, 11 hours. And teenagers, 14 to 18, this group, they still need a lot of sleep. They need between 8 and 9 hours of sleep. Adults, on average, they need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. When people get older in their 90s, their sleep time reduces significantly. The amount of sleep each day changes. The proportion of REM sleep also changes by age. Infants and young children, they have a larger proportion of REM sleeps during their total sleep time. But adults have a less proportion, smaller proportion of REM sleep. The theory says that for children and infants, the stimulation, the neuron firing from REM sleep helps the brain grow, helps the brain develop useful connections. That is one theory. Another theory about dreaming, this is one I like, the activation synthesis theory. This is biological theory. According to this theory, dreams occur by stimulation in the brain. When people are sleeping, the neurons in the brainstem, especially in the pons, a structure called the pons, get activated, they fire and they send information, stimulation to the higher level of brain structures, to the cortex. When the cortex is stimulated, the cortex try to make sense of the random imageries, random sounds popping up in the brain, and try to tell a coherent story out of chaos. And the result is that the brains are always bizarre. The brains are always illogical, incoherent. In the daytime, sometimes you would not believe in what could happen in a dream. This is a result from the brain trying to make sense of the chaotic random stimulation generated by the random firing from the brainstem. According to this theory, the dream do not have any meaning. They are random. They're nonsensical. And then there's also the cognitive development theory. These theories believe that dreams are important for cognitive development, for developing thinking abilities. And this is really related with REM change over the life cycle. Young people have more REM sleep. REM sleep is important, definitely very important. Suppose I go to a bed tonight, and tonight I lose some REM sleep. I have less than usual REM sleep for this evening. The next day, the next night, I have to make it up. So my brain would automatically increase the amount of REM sleep in the next night to just make it up, to maintain the proper level of REM sleep. This is called REM rebound. The next topic in the state of consciousness is about drugs. We know chemicals change the way people experience their lives. Chemicals change people's emotions, change people's mood, and change people's behavior. One obvious example would be DUI, driving under influence. When people get drunk, they should not be driving. Alcohol changes people's behaviors, functions, focus, attention, memory, and mood. Other medications, medicines, and drugs do also have these impacts. Psychoactive drugs, these are chemical substances that alter perception and mood and conscious awareness, also behavior. In intro psychology, we focus on three types of psychoactive drugs: the depressant, stimulant, and hallucinogens. The depressants, of course, depress the nervous system. These are substances that reduce neural activity and slow down body functions. Alcohol is a very common depressant. It reduces people's arousal. Alcohol actually is, the effect is dose dependent. When people start to drink a small amount, and when people become just tipsy, not drunk, they seem more sociable. They're more less and less inhibited. Actually, this is also a depressant effect. Alcohol reduces the arousal of the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for controlling impulse. When people are a little bit tipsy, a little bit influenced by alcohol, they are more impulsive, they're more spontaneous, they're more talkative, they're more sociable, they're less inhibited, they're less shy, and it's good for social interactions. That's at a low dosage. When people keep drinking and the dosage increases, people's nervous system get seriously inhibited. Their movement will be impaired. Their hand-eye coordination would be impaired, and their impulse control will be very poor. Sometimes they get into trouble in their behavior. And alcohol also reduces the activation or the arousal of the cerebellum. Cerebellum is responsible for balancing the body, body posture, and movements. When people get seriously drunk, they tend to fall. They tend to fall on the ground. They cannot balance themselves, and their movement gets seriously impaired. And when people keep drinking, overdose, they black out. So the alcohol will totally shut down the conscious awareness. People black out. That's one kind of a depressant. Barbiturates is another kind of depressant. In the old days, this medication was used for treating people with anxiety problems. Anxiety has high arousal. Anxiety is linked with over-arousal. Sympathetic nervous system too active. The parasympathetic system is not active enough. People are on edge, and they are fearful, and they are anxious. Barbiturates reduces arousal. It helps managing anxiety, but it has a lot of bad side effects. It makes people depressed, and it causes depression. Opiates is another kind of a depressant, and this is a more serious drug. Yeah. Alcohol impairs people's motor skills, judgment, memory. Barbiturates. Opiates are derived from opium, and this class of drugs would include morphine and heroin. It reduces anxiety, but they are highly addictive. That was one class of psychoactive drugs, the depressants. The stimulant is another type or class of psychoactive drugs. These drugs increase neural activity, increase arousal. They speed up the body's functions. Caffeine is one type of stimulant. It keeps people awake, keep people energized. Nicotine is another stimulant. And then amphetamine is a stimulant. Ecstasy is a stimulant. Let's use a cocaine, this stimulant, as an example to demonstrate the mechanism of stimulants. Cocaine produces euphoria. It gives people a high. And how does it produce the high or the euphoria? It works on the neurotransmitters. The cocaine, here you see, cocaine binds to the sites that normally reabsorb neurotransmitters, dopamine. Dopamine, we know that dopamine, this neurotransmitter, is a reward transmitter, and it creates a euphoria, creates positive feelings, make people happy. And norepinephrine, that give you a lot of energy. Serotonin. Serotonin is also related with mood regulation. We know that some people with depression, they don't have sufficient serotonin activities. By increasing serotonin binding to the receptor sites, some medications are able to reduce depression. Serotonin is for mood regulation, producing positive mood and reducing negative mood. Dopamine produces happiness. The cocaine here, this long bulb, this bulb will be the terminal of an axon. The axon sends information to other neurons. The axon produces electric current, the action potential. The action potential arrives at the terminal of the axon. Now the electric current stops here. The electric current cannot cross the gap, the synapse. So the neuron would make use of neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters be released into the synapse and cross over to bind on the receptor side. On the other side, this is a dendrite of the second neuron. When the second neurons and receptors are stimulated, the second neuron will fire. The information gets passed on. The neurotransmitters are important for people. Some neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, produce a positive mood. Well, the neurotransmitters are being released in the synapse. They are taken back at the same time. These little openings, channels, are reuptake channels. The free-floating neurotransmitters are picked up and reabsorbed back into the the axons of the neuron sending the signal. And cocaine really block up the reuptake channel. When the reuptake channel are blocked, the neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, they become a one-way traffic. They get released in the synapse and they cross over, they bind to the receptor side, but there's no way for them to go back. Reduced reabsorption means more accumulation of neurotransmitters in the synapse, more time, more opportunities for more neurotransmitters to bind and stimulate the receptors. So this would increase dopamine and serotonin activity and produce a strong positive feeling, make people really happy. But after the user stopped using cocaine, he or she would experience a crash. The person will experience very negative feelings. That's because the cocaine would reduce the neuron's natural ability to produce these neurotransmitters. And when the person stops using it, the user will experience a decrease in positive mood, would experience a crash. And this kind of negative feelings, when the user stops using the substance is called withdrawal. Withdrawal effects are very uncomfortable, very distressful. When people develop a withdrawal effect, they tend to use it to use drug again. When the user stops using cocaine, he has a crash. In order to get rid of crash, repair the mood, feel better, he would continue to use the cocaine, the drug. That's called a dependence. When the person does not use it, it leads feeling of a physical pain, intensive craving, and a lot of negative emotions. These are dependencies. For many drugs, use will increase tolerance. At the beginning, while one person starts drinking, maybe one beer will make him tipsy. But after he has to keep drinking for maybe several months, he will need 2 beers to have the same effect. Tolerance increases. So that's why dosage tend to increase. Those are depressants and stimulants, and then hallucinogens. Hallucinogens, they produce a basic hallucination, altered perception, and evoke sensory images in the absence of sensory input. For example, auditory hallucination would mean these people hear voices when there's nobody speaking. They hear voices in their head, but they feel and they believe these voices are real. And sometimes people see imageries when there's no input. The hallucinogens are also called psychedelics. Psychedelics, these are mind-manifesting drugs. Here are some examples of hallucinogens. Marijuana. Marijuana is a mild hallucinogen. It's coming from the hemp plant. LSD, these are also hallucinogens. Some examples of the drugs. What we need to really master are the types, the different types, the depressants, the stimulants, and hallucinogens. We pay special attention to alcohol, coffee, cocaine, nicotine. These are common types of drug, and also marijuana, which is legal in Canada. And then another topic in altered state of consciousness is hypnosis. Hypnosis is an interaction between 2 persons at least. One person, the hypnotist, gave a lot of suggestions to the subject, to the person being hypnotized. And the hypnotist can influence the person's perceptions, the feelings, thoughts, and behavior. It's really, some people are more suggestible. People who are more suggestible to, more receptive to suggestions are easier to hypnotize. After a person being hypnotized, sometimes he has no memory, not being able to remember stuff. Here's an example of hypnosis. This is a hypnotist. This woman is being hypnotized, and during this hypnotized state, the hypnotist can make her smell a really strong, powerful odor, chemical odor. In the normal weak state of consciousness, people would be really disturbed, would really feel disgusted by this odor. But the person being hypnotized, apparently they don't have the normal reactions of a wakeful person. That's a hypnotized state. The hypnotist gave a lot of suggestive instructions or suggestions. There are different theories about how this would occur. One theory is a social influence theory. This theory is a role play theory. The person, the subject, is playing the role of being a good subject. You don't want to make the hypnotist disappointed. You want to be a good sport. This is like a play, a stage play. These are two actors trying to enact a script. That's a social influence theory. Another theory is the so-called divided consciousness theory. And this person apparently has a divided consciousness. On the one hand, she's able to receive and hear the instructions from the hypnotist. He or she is aware of the suggestions. She got influenced by the suggestions which were developed, delivered verbally. At the same time, she does not have any conscious awareness of the odor, the really strong, powerful odor coming from through her nose. That's a divide. So her consciousness is divided into two parts: the knowing part and the not knowing part. Those are the two theories of hypnosis. Many people don't believe that hypnosis are real. They believe that these are hoaxes, staged. If you look for the amazing Randy, the amazing magician. He's a magician. Oh, here, magician Randy. He was a magician, and after he retired from his magician job, he did a lot of work in debunking the paranormal claims. The hypnosis is one of the ruses. He believes those are ruses, try to uncover them. A really interesting guy. He died, passed away last year.